Would you like to take a seat? Can you feel how excited I am to actually see real people in front of me? Welcome everybody to Transforming Transportation 2023. This is the 20th edition of Transforming Transportation. Pause for reaction. Longer pause for a better reaction. I'm home. Fantastic. All right, accelerating toward green and inclusive mobility is what we are doing over the next 2 days. In the room here in DC and also virtually as well. The virtual audience, I know you've already done this. You told everybody who you are, where you're from, why you're here, but I want you to hear the in-person audience welcoming you virtually because we're all in this together. In-person audience, say hello to the hybrid audience. Go ahead. Oh. All right, so what are we doing? We are reimagining transportation solutions through innovation and ongoing challenges, climate crisis, economic instability, and also COVID-19 as well. There is so much for us to do together. So coming up, we have 5 plenaries. Unfortunately, they're all moderated by me, so you'll be bored of me in the next 48 hours, but also 15 technical sessions. There is so much for you to get stuck into. We have a knowledge exhibition as well, and also time for you to network. These networking sessions are called coffee breaks. Use them well. There are so many ways for us to communicate with each other. If you're virtual, you can be in the chat. You can be at World Bank Live in the chat there. You also have a microphone just in the middle of the room, in the aisle. You'll see it right there. That is for you here in the Preston Auditorium. Online, we have chat moderators. Hello, Georges. Hi. George is one of the chat moderators. Can you say hello, George, so that the hybrid audience who are virtual know that we are listening out for their questions? George, please say hi.
Good morning.
Oh, that's beautiful. How would you say that in online chat?
Hi, everyone. Yeah.
It would sound like this. Thank you, George. These are our chat moderators. They will be moderating you virtually online. Your comments, your questions, they are so very welcome. We would not be here without our lead sponsors, Visa and FedEx. We thank you. Our development sponsor is FIA Foundation. The media partner is CNBC Africa. You will feel the presence of our very important sponsors through the next 2 days. We thank you. Transforming Transportation is co-hosted by the World Bank and by the World Resources Institute. And it's just such a great partnership. You think of 2 things that go together beautifully, then that basically sums up the metaphor for our 2 hosts. You're about to hear from Guan Chen, the VP for Infrastructure at the World Bank, and Annie Dasgupta, the President and CEO of the World Resources Institute. Gentlemen, please do the official welcome. Thank you. Guan Chen, you're first.
Thank you, Femi, for the introduction, and good morning to all of you and all the audience sitting here in the auditorium, and all the colleagues and friends and everybody connected online. It's really great to see all of you here. Really delighted to kick off this edition of Transforming Transportation. It's really truly exciting to host this event in person after meeting virtually for the last 2 years. I see many familiar faces, and I'm sure that we will have the opportunity to get to know many more people during the next 2 days. I recall last time that Annie and I co-host this event was actually just a bit over three years ago in early January 2020, and what the world has changed. We all know that. It's really exciting to be back and in person. I know many of the participants joining us online, so it's really, I really want to say hello to all of them. This is in different time zones all throughout the world. I also like to acknowledge our longtime partner, World Resources Institute has been a fantastic partner, and we think that we can both feel proud of the depth and the quality of our collaborations over many years. Together, we have co-hosted this event for 20 years. That's right, we're talking about 2 decades, over the last 2 decades that we co-host this event here in Washington, D.C. at the World Bank venue, continually with our partner, World Resources Institute. It's really hard to believe that what started as a relatively modest transport symposium has now transformed, going into such an impressive way that I think we should be proud to say this is becoming one of the leading global events on transportation and sustainable developments. That's why we're all here today. Perhaps one of the most important factors behind the longevity of the transforming transportation is the forward-looking natures. I think my colleague and I were just curious and looking back in 2004 when we started this series and look at what was the agenda at that time. It will be interesting if you look back, you will see that at that time we actually featured some cutting-edge sort of topic like e-mobility and fuel, alternative fuel at that time in 2004. So that's 20 years ago we were thinking about these topics. Another key strength of the transforming transportation is its ability to adapt and stay relevant in a rapidly changing global landscape. The event has been about bringing together great minds in this auditorium and also virtually to discuss real-world challenges and also find practical and tangible solutions. And this year's edition is no different. If you look at the agenda, you notice that all our sessions over the next 2 days are all connected to many of the critical issues facing us today. And also, one could, particularly for those policymakers, you could say those are the issues that keeping you awake at the moment. And these are ranging from climate change, COVID, conflict, supply chain disruptions, and economic shocks. And then all these public crises facing the world today have profound impact on the way the global transport system and also on peoples and business that rely on the system. But as difficult as the current challenge may be, it is also providing a unique opportunity for us to rethink transport in a fundamental way. I think everybody will say, right, don't really waste a crisis. We have multiple crises, but it also forces us to make tough decisions. This might just be the impetus we need to make changes as a global community to tackle the challenge we face. And that's why the overarching theme of this version of the transforming transportation is called accelerating towards green and inclusive mobility. To me, these 2 words, green and inclusive, perfectly summarize the dual challenge we face in front of us. We need to expand access to transport so that everyone can benefit, but at the same time, drastically reducing the negative impact, particularly climate impact of the transport system. In other words, we want to provide more mobility with fewer side effects. This may seem like a really tough question, but by no means impossible. With fresh thinkings, innovative solutions, responsible policy makings, and also innovative financing solutions, we know the future is within the reach for transport system and for our people, for business, and for the planet. At the World Bank, we're working really hard every day with our clients and partners to make this vision a reality. Our transport portfolio has been decisively shifted towards climate-smart transport, and we're determined to keep this momentum going. In last fiscal year, 2022, we set a record in terms of transport sector lending at $8.3 billion globally. And all of them feature components or interventions that are contributing to climate change mitigation or adaptations. Our priority is to help countries identify climate-smart solutions that are relevant to our local context, but at the same time bolster positive development impacts. We achieve this by doing what we do best, using data, using economic modeling, using science, and to inform decision-making in a systematic way. But we cannot do this alone. I'm proud that the partnership we built with other organizations and development partners to help to advance sustainable mobilities through the recently launched global facility to decarbonizing transport. The private sector will also have a key role to play as we move forward in this transition. And we are collaborating closely with many of them to find solutions, but also to bring finance for countries that are desperately need this kind of additional finance for the system to move forward. Many of you know that I started my new role as the Vice President for Infrastructure just last month, but I'm not new to the transport sector. In fact, I work in this sector for decades. And one thing that I learned from my previous position in transport is the fact that, or any other aspect of our infrastructure business, is that we don't work in isolations. The shift in sustainable mobility will require close integration with other sectors, particularly energies, digital development, and many others. And I can guarantee you that cross-sectoral coordination and collaboration is not just a buzzword, it is a daily life of our work at the World Bank. The case for green and inclusive transport is stronger than ever. The good news is that this room is filled with remarkable thinkers, practitioners, experts, and disruptive colleagues that could help us to get us there. And I urge all of you to bring your very best to this conversation. Don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and ask the tough questions, challenge yourself, challenge each other. I'm convinced that our exchange over the next 2 days is going to help us to cultivate some of the game-changing ideas that we need to transform transportation. Again, it is really a pleasure for me to kick off this important convening, and I look forward to hearing about our discussion and outcome of the 2 days deliberations. And collectively, let's make the 20th edition of Transforming Transportation a success. Thank you very much.
Annie Daskut is the President and CEO of the World Resources Institute. He needs about 10 seconds of very loud applause to get to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I can't tell you how happy I am that we are back here together. This is disruptive. It has been 3 years now, and I can't tell you, Guang, how happy I am to hosting this with you. Guang and I both have a different job since we last met, but we are still hosting this together. So it gets me great pleasure. I also was thinking about 20 years. This is the 20th year we're doing this. You know, there is a good way to look at it that is so good, we want to do it all the time. A not so good way to look at it, we should have solved this by 20 years. And we wouldn't have to meet. But I'm glad we are meeting. And I just want to say a big hi to all the people connected online. You know, this COVID disruption did teach us a lot of things. But this, during this last 2 years when we did this online, you know, 30,000 people joined. You couldn't have imagined that. You couldn't have imagined that that could happen. But so, you know, this disruption did teach us something. But I can't tell you how important it is to be physically together. This meeting, this gathering is not about just the plenaries and the technical meetings. It's about for us to talk to each other, you know, create new partnership, radical partnership that is needed. So I'm glad you're here. I'm very pleased to be here. These 2 years have been quite disruptive in many ways, and major shifts have happened. I want to tell you 2 amazing things happened that last year. Number one, 6 states in India, and some of my colleagues are here from both the bank and WRI, who were part of it, came together to procure electric buses, 5,000 of them. in one go. And that one procurement, they actually were able to reduce the price of electric buses by 27% below diesel buses. Think about that for a minute. People think electrification of public transport is the price is the biggest, one of the biggest barriers. So in one procurement, the states being able to come together, get their specifications together, being able to actually procure together has changed the price in one go. So I think it'll be very difficult in India to sell an electric bus again that is more expensive than a diesel bus. So Indian government is so excited about it, they're in the process of actually thinking about procuring 50,000 buses. So this is the kind of shift that actually shifts a market. It's a market transformation story. It's not an electric bus story. That is what happened in India. And this doesn't happen in India. Here in the United States, we are actually part of a project with Bezos Earth Fund that strives to electrify all school buses in the United States. In the United States has 480,000 school buses. All public buses in the United States about just 80,000. So school buses are the most buses in the United States. 16,000 school districts, 480,000 buses. And the goal is to electrify all of them. But the goal wasn't just to electrify just the buses, but work with manufacturers, with utilities that will supply electricity, community groups, most importantly, environmental justice groups, so that the electric buses went to disadvantaged community first. Because the United States, like most people in the place in the world, poorer people actually use school buses more than richer kids. And so they actually get impacted by diesel fumes more than the richer kids. But what magically happened is Biden administration, their last two climate bills that they passed, put $5 billion, repeat, $5 billion for electrifying school buses in the United States. So this is the kind of thing that happened last year. And think about the last year. Last year was the year when we had 9% inflation, Ukraine war, energy crisis, food crisis, unrelenting climate disaster, including the absolute disaster in Pakistan. In a very disruptive year, these kind of changes took place. These kind of system shifts is what we need. We gather here every year, hopefully every year, to talk about what transportation needs and how everything is not going up to speed. Actually, in transportation, things are not going the speed with which we need. We all know that. Transportation is one of the lagging sectors of transformation. We all know that. But we need now that we need to bring together how we collectively can bring these transformational shifts. This time for doing a sector at a time, one thing at a time, it's just not there. We know that the transport sector and its criticality, and if it doesn't shift, it'll be impossible to meet 1.5 degree or biodiversity goal or nature goal, or more importantly, goals of poverty reduction and equality. We all know these are interconnected. That this is the kind of system transformation that we need. This is why WRI, with our partners, we put together something called the System Change Lab to see how to look at the sector and sectors across that are interconnected as systems. We actually had an online meeting, seminar about this, just as a precursor to TT. And then the systems, we look at what are the indicators that we have to look at. And we look at 5 big indicators. I want to look at my notes so I don't misread them. One is obvious one, reliable access, reliable and safe access to everyone. So not only everyone gets transportation, but they get it safely. The second is to reduce travel, unavoidable travel, both vehicular and air travel. The third, we look at shift towards public transport and walking and biking away from individual cars. Fourth, we look at decarbonizing transport. Guang just talked about that. And finally, how do we get decarbonized shipping and aviation? These are the 5 things we think are the meta indicators for the transport sector. If these 5 things move in the right direction, then the sector as a whole is moving in the direction. You won't be surprised to hear that all these indicators are actually moving in the right direction, but none of them are moving at the speed and scale we need to reduce emission to 50% by 2030 or to keep to 1.5 degree by 2050. None of them. You hear so much about electric mobility, which is actually in a fantastically positive place. But electric mobility needs to move 5 times faster. Walking and biking needs to move 10 times faster to get there. So why is it these things not happening, that we know these things? I just want to make 5 things very quickly. I see I have 1 minute. The first is to get finance right. I'm very glad we partner here with the World Bank. If the World Bank couldn't help us figure out the finance right, we will never get finance right. Right, Guang? You agree. It's beyond e-buses. It's to get cities to actually invest in these things and to make sure there are investments available to Global South cities for this. It's not just invest in new things like buses, but to roads. World Bank actually estimates road maintenance is going to cost 250 times more, 2.5 times more than it does because of climate change. The second is to renew focus on public transport. I can't emphasize this more. The importance of public transport and getting public transport, the equity issue will never be met if public transport isn't working. And the third, we had a real momentum during COVID on walking and biking. I hope that doesn't get reversed as we go away from COVID to whatever the new normal is. But that needs to be put down. A lot of cities have built infrastructure. We have to make that infrastructure safe and keep investing on it so people continue to use. And finally, we absolutely need to get transportation in the core part of the global transition of climate and economy that's taking place. I go to COP every year, and I must say I'm very sorry to see how little is discussed on transportation in this big forums. And this is critical for us to happen. So these are the things we plan to discuss next Tuesday. This is what the agenda for the next Tuesday looks like. And we need your help to bring momentum. I really hope that these 2 days, actually, we are not able to just discuss this, but create new solution, new partnership to get system change in place. And I personally look forward to meeting and saying hello to hopefully all of you, but most of you. Thank you very much for being here.
Think back 8 years this month. Anyone remember what they were doing? Me neither. But our keynote speaker was flying around the world with no fuel, apart from the energy gained from the sun. You're thinking, who would possibly do that? Somebody who's alive to tell the story today, thank goodness. Our keynote speaker is an explorer and an innovator. He puts those 2 things together to inspire people like us, transport professionals, to do better at our work. He's an environmentalist who comes up with ways to tackle some of the biggest problems on our earth and also make money. He's a clean energy technology pioneer who goes around the world asking authorities and governments to look at his solutions that can actually help us get to a cleaner, more sustainable world. His name is Bertrand Piccard. It is so good to have you here at TT 2023. Bertrand, you went around the world with no fuel, but does the Zoom work? Hello? Phew. Bertrand, I'm going to give you 10 minutes for the keynote and then 10 minutes for our audience, our attendees, to talk to you. Over to you and welcome.
With pleasure. Yes, it's true that I flew around the world in an aeroplane having absolutely no fuel. But it was with 1 person on board, 0 passengers, and the plane was 72-meter wingspan, and big like a jumbo jet, and the weight of a family car. So it's clear that it's not the way that we are going to be able to fly very soon with 200 passengers across an ocean. So when I was asked to talk to you this morning, I thought, what can I say that would be new and practical, something that we can use today? And it's not easy to say anything new in transportation, because we all know that we need public transport that is efficient, that we need individual transport that is clean and decarbonized, and in a way that we don't have any traffic jams anymore. We all know that we need digitalization, and once we say that, we hear a lot of people who tell us it's impossible, because nobody has done it before. And this is very often the reaction of people. They have such a huge difficulty to project themselves in a future that will be completely different than the present. And this is why it's important to bring the pioneering spirit and to be able to change the paradigm. We speak a lot about paradigm. What does it mean to change a paradigm? It means to learn to do something else than what we have always done, and to think something else than what we have learned to think. But it creates a lot of resistance, because there are not so many people who love pioneering spirit. And I read yesterday or 2 days ago that in Europe, currently, there is a meeting of car manufacturers who are studying together how they can fight against the ban of thermal engines decided by the European Parliament for 2035. Can you imagine? There's an official democratic decision, and you have car manufacturers who study the way to fight against this change in order to keep the statu quo, to keep what we have today instead of moving into the future. So it's clear that when I was trying to set up the project of Solar Impulse to fly around the world without fuel in an airplane, I faced exactly the same type of resistance. I heard the airplane manufacturers who told me it's impossible to do it because you will never have enough energy from the sun to fly an airplane day and night. And that's the paradigm of today. It's always more production, more supply. It is more consumption. And when we have the war in Ukraine, the first reaction when we have a lack of Russian gas is to say desperately, where can we find other suppliers? Instead of asking, how can we be more efficient? How can we consume less and save energy? So this is what we had to do with Solar Impulse, to make an airplane that was so efficient that it could work with the energy of the sun. And this is why it was 72-meter wingspan. This is why it was so light, the weight of a family car. And when I came back again to the airplane manufacturers and telling them, okay, this is exactly what I need, the size, the weight, the efficiency, they told me it's impossible again. And I said, but why? And they said, because an airplane, when it is small, it is light. When it is big, it is heavy. But your airplane, Solar Impulse, has to be light and big. So it doesn't work, it's outside of the line. And we are facing these type of things all the time. And at the end, who built this airplane? A shipyard. A shipyard who used carbon fiber, who invented completely new technologies to build this plane in a way that the airplane manufacturers have never imagined. And this is what I like in the situation that we have today. We need to change the paradigm, and we need to change the narrative. Up to now, we heard a lot of people saying transport in a sustainable way or ecology in general is going to be really difficult. It's getting boring. It's expensive. It's a threat for mobility, for comfort, for the economy. And this has kept us prisoners of an old way of thinking. We need to change the paradigm today. We need to show that sustainable transport and ecology and environment in general is something exciting. It creates jobs. It's bringing people together. It is economically profitable. And why is it economically profitable? Because it obliges us to modernize everything. We need to modernize our buildings to make them efficient. We need to modernize the type of motors. A thermal engine is 27% efficient at the most. Normally it's 15 to 20. The electric engine of Solar Impulse was 97%, losing almost nothing. We need to modernize our industrial processes. to modernize our sources of energy. And why is it profitable? Because it is more efficient. If we save natural resources, if we save energy, we make a bigger margin of profit at the end. And this increase of profit pays for the upfront investment. It's exactly what we heard before with the example of the electric buses. Usually, an electric bus is a bit more expensive than a diesel bus, except in the case you heard in the introduction. But usually, it's a bit more expensive. But over the 10 years of the lifetime, you have so little maintenance and no fuel that you gain more money than the increase of the capex. So we see that over time, but it's only if we increase a little bit our angle of vision. If we look at the total cost of ownership, all these efficient modernization of infrastructures are extremely profitable. And this is what we wanted to prove, demonstrate with the Solar Impulse Foundation. After the flight of the airplane around the world, we have identified more than 1,500 technical solutions that exist today, who are ecological, they protect the environment, they offer new business opportunities in the field of protection of the environment, and they are economically profitable for the one who produces them, as well as for the customer. And some of those are absolutely not known. People ignore that. You can have a module for $500 that you install on the thermal engine of your car, and it takes away 20% of the fuel consumption and reduces the pollution by half. But people don't know it. There is no incentive for that. And the company who is producing it is maybe going bankrupt because customers are not aware that they can buy this. You have the electric vehicle to grid system. This is also a change of paradigm that is so important to me. The electric vehicle is not only a car with a battery, it's a battery on wheels, because 95% of the time we are not driving. So the car is still parked and it can be connected to renewable intermittent energy to fill up the battery. And in the evening, when there is a peak of demand, when everybody is switching on television, heating, cooking, lighting, and so on, you can discharge the car on the grid. And you flatten the curve of demand, and you save a lot of energy. Tremendous amount of energy is saved. But this is not allowed in most of the countries. Can you imagine? Because it is not allowed to have an individual person providing electricity to the grid from his battery. You have really interesting things in the field of aviation. It's not yet total decarbonization, but you have the software that helps the pilot to optimize his flight. 5% of energy saving. You have electric tractors bringing the airplane to the threshold. For a big airport, it's a huge difference. Well, all these, are incremental steps in the way that we can decarbonize transportation. I can give you a lot more examples, but I don't have the time to tell you everything, but you can go and look at it at the website of the Solar Impulse Foundation. But meanwhile, between now, where we have some of solutions, but not all of them, and the moment where we will be decarbonized, there's a gap. And I believe that it's really important that we offset the CO2 during all the period of the gap in order to show to the world that the world of transportation is aware of this need to go fast, that the world of transportation is aware that we need all this innovation, all this pioneering spirit, and that we can be role models. This is what I would like to do. Because, there are so many people who say, oh, aviation doesn't care, shipping doesn't care, automotive industry doesn't care. We have to show to the world that we care, that we are pioneers, that we are innovators, that we are making the world better. And we can do it by federating all the industry who finally starts to understand that it is economically profitable because it's a new business, it's a new field, it's a new opportunity for the world to modernize all our systems.
But
So let's be pioneers and let's be innovators.
Bertrand, this is a really good point, just to pause so that our audience can also speak to you as well. If you're dying to ask Bertrand Piccard a question, you have 3 minutes to get to that microphone, and I would suggest you do it sustainably and walk very fast. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good morning, Bertrand. Charles Schlumberger, the lead air transport specialist of the World Bank. We met 10 years ago at the Swiss Embassy, and then I arranged with ICAO that I help you the overflights for the Solar Impulse. My question is directly on aviation. We talk a lot about sustainable aviation fuels, same aircraft. It might reduce half of emissions, but the big question is, what is the next technology? You did in 2019 a road record with a hydrogen car, most kilometers driven. Hydrogen aircraft, electric aircraft, takes 30 years to change a fleet. Where do you see, next to sustainable aviation fuel, the technology that, the opportunity in aviation to get away from carbon fuel? Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent question, and good to see and hear you again after 10 years. Today you hear some airlines who say we are getting sustainable because we use 1% of sustainable aviation fuel coming from cooking oil. This is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. We will never have enough cooking oil for all the aviation. So I think if we want to change the type of fuel, we can make fuel from agriculture waste, not from the food, but from the waste. We can do aviation fuel with hydrogen, absolutely. But the question will be, how can we do enough of it? And it changes the type of motors, because we will need electric motors. So this is also why you hear now a lot more about electrofuel. You take the CO2 from the atmosphere, you take hydrogen that is extracted from water with electrolyzers working with renewable energy, and when you combine them together, you have kerosene, you have hydrocarbon chains. And this is all a question of supply. The aviation world starts to be more and more ready for this, and Airbus has an absolutely beautiful hydrogen program for 2035. But now the question is, how is the industry going to provide enough of this fuel?
I'm going to go online. What's happening online, Georges? What's the conversation that Bertrand has sparked online? Your microphone is on, and the tech team will bring it up. Go ahead.
Yes, we've had several questions. I think the most challenging, and where we would like to hear from Bertrand, maybe go even beyond transportation, but how can air polluting factories decarbonize? And also, how do we mitigate water-intensive use, nature of green hydrogen, if you have thoughts on that, Bertrand?
Yes, I noticed that if we speak of decarbonization as a goal in itself, saying that CO2 is the problem, and you put this problem on the table, everybody will have another idea. Everybody will also be afraid that changing his way of doing will be detrimental for his economical development. And this is why I promote a complete change in this approach. Instead of having all the problem on the table and speaking of decarbonization, I think we should put all the solutions on the table. All the solutions that help us to be more efficient, to be more profitable, to save natural resources, to save energy. And then we will distribute this solution amongst the countries, depending on their development, methodology, politics, or social situation, or in the industries, different industries, we can need them. And then it's very easy to find the investment. Because if you have profitable solutions and you have countries or industries ready to use them, you have the investment flowing in. And then you modernize the world by making it more efficient. And the decarbonization will be the consequence of it. Because if you are efficient in energy and resources, you automatically decarbonize. But decarbonization will be the consequence and not the goal. And it will be much easier to reach it if we reach it indirectly by showing to the industry how profitable becomes all the technologies that help us to be more efficient.
Can I ask you in 30 seconds or less, Bertrand, what do you think about green hydrogen?
Green hydrogen, for me, is the only hydrogen, because if it is gray or brown hydrogen made from fossil energy, it's a waste, complete waste. You better use the fuel directly rather than turn it into hydrogen that will be turned into electricity again. So green hydrogen, that means you have electrolyzers, you have renewable sources of energy, and when you have enough of this energy, you produce the hydrogen, and this hydrogen will be like solar or wind electricity that is made liquid and easy to transport. And honestly, I believe very much in it, especially for heavy transport. For heavy transport, it's really good. Personally, I believe that the battery for light transport is more efficient because you lose less electricity into the life cycle.
2 quick questions from our audience and then we will let you go. Hello, welcome, go ahead.
Thank you. Mohamed Mizgani from the International Association of Public Transport. Good to see you again, Bertrand Piccard. One very quick question. At the end of the day, we will need a political decision. We will need policymakers that will adopt the technological solutions that you are proposing and that will dare to change the status quo. So how to convince them, how to make them, think beyond their electoral mandate and take decisions now that will lead to results maybe after them. And we all know that for them it's easier to listen to this group of car manufacturers rejecting the decision of the European Parliament than to listen to people who are proposing long-term solutions. Thank you.
I love your question, because it's true that there are forces fighting against each other. On one side, it's the statu quo, and on the other side, it's the green activists. And the green activists have a very idealistic view of the world, but it's not really connected to the economical rules. So I believe that what can really change the world is when it is the business and finance people who will speak to the governments and tell them what we need. This is why I like this type of meeting here with the World Bank, with the Resource Institute, with people who know about money, finance, economy, industry, transport, trade. And all these people, if they speak to the governments, they're going to be listened to, they're going to be heard, because this is the way that the world works. The politicians, they want something that is helping them to be re-elected and helping to create jobs and helping the economy to make money. If the world of the economy and finance shows that it is possible to do this into the protection of the environment, we will be successful. But not just listening to green activists, because they are not heard by the governments.
Thank you.
Final question.
Good morning. So my name is Iori Mori. I'm an Open Innovation Manager for East Japan Railway Company. And so my question is more of your, I would say, the mental model of your activity or actions. That so I always have a similar struggle to how to convince our big boys in terms of how they could actually envision the future. And the problem is that I always tend to be a little bit too futuristic, end up saying that the boss is saying that, well, you're not quite Japanese, and I always have that challenge of how they could actually get convinced. And my question is, what is your, I would say, the key principle or the core value on taking your actions to actually draw the future and let people be convinced?
Yes, I'm not only an explorer, I'm also a medical doctor and a psychiatrist. And I noticed that it's always important to speak the language of the people that you want to convince. If you go to the governments and you say, we need a clean transport to protect the environment because life is a miracle and nature is magical and we need to protect it. My experience is that it doesn't work because the language of the world is the language of profit and job creation. So we need to show all the profitability that we can get from the protection of the environment, all the new business opportunities, the new startups who will be able to grow and to bloom, all the job creation, all the new business opportunities, all the efficiency, all the savings that we can do. And if we manage to do that, I would say change becomes a little bit more possible. Because if people hate to change, it's because they're afraid. But if you give them an incentive to change, you show them that it's an advantage, you change the narrative to make it really enthusiastic and exciting, I think then we have a chance to have much more people going into this. But of course, as long as we hear green activists saying that the only way to protect the environment is to degrow, to have less mobility, less comfort, less economic growth, of course you create a terrible resistance against the ecology. And we see very well in America, especially in the United States, where you have this cleavage between the Democrats and the Republicans when we speak about environment. And this is a mistake, because the protection of the environment can be profitable, can increase the energy independence, can increase the stability, the growth, the economic growth. And this is what everybody needs to understand, not only one group or the other, but everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Bertrand Piccard, you're such an underachiever. Explorer, medical doctor, psychiatrist, and the greatest title of all, keynote speaker for TTDC 2023. Add it to your credit. It has been such a joy having you as our keynote speaker on the very first day of TT 2023. Bertrand Piccard, thank you. The audience online and in the room will thank you very loudly.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So if you ask any kind of authority figure or politician and they're not a mayor, they will tell you that mayors do everything. They run everything. They know everything. They have to cope with everything. I know this because mayors have told me this. We are going to do a tour around the world with mayors who run Dakar, Rio, Accra and Lima. It's quite a collection. We're going to hear about their challenges, how they're dealing with the climate crisis, how they're dealing with unplanned for shocks. Most of the mayors and the city leaders will be online, but I have the mayor of Dakar, who is right here, and he's going to be right here any moment now. Mr. Mayor, please come and join me on stage. Thank you. I have a green seat right here for you.
Oh, is that you?
Yes, I'm sorry. You have to sit next to me. That's the downside of coming to TT. All right, wonderful. We are going to line up our other city leaders in just a moment. When they appear, that is when we start to talk to them. But as I have you right here in this space, Mayor, it's so nice to have you. Atiqul Islam, Mayor of Dakar, Bangladesh. When you're looking at sustainable transport, what is your biggest challenge in Dakar?
Thank you very much. And I must give a thanks to World Bank to arrange such a transforming transportation. As a mayor of Dhaka, we have two cities, Dhaka North and Dhaka South. So Dhaka North is, in my area, it is 15 million people. I'm the mayor of 15 million. So a lot of countries less than 15 million as well. So that is the 15 million at the city of this at this moment. And when we are talking, and also the 49,000 people are living per square kilometer. 49,000 per square kilometer. And some areas are more. Some areas are more than 79,000. So on an average, is 49,000 people are living per square kilometer. And top of that, 2,000 people are influx due to the climate change in my city every day. 2,000 people. That's for climate change. As you know that at this moment, we are facing 3 big C's. When we are talking here, 3 big C's. Number 1 C is the post-COVID. Number 2 C is the climate change. And number 3 C's is the conflict, the war of all over the world. So due to that reason, more people are influxing. Jobless, due to the conflict, the cost of product going very high. They have to do other things. So the people are moving to my city. And being a city as a humanitarian ground, I cannot say, hey, stop, I don't want to bring any more. So that is the reality at this moment in Dhaka city.
May I just ask you, why do you say post-COVID? Has Dhaka done something that the rest of the world hasn't?
Of course, rest of the world...
Is this breaking news right now?
The whole world is facing the post-COVID. And especially Dhaka city, honestly speaking, under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, we are much, much more better than other cities as well. And at this moment, we are first dose, second dose, third, and fourth doses are going on for the vaccination. So, and these are all free of cost. So we must give a thanks to our national government to arrange such a wonderful initiative. So we are much more safe, but still, when I'm talking the slum areas, the footpath, hey, why you are coming here? This is all over the world, they have a jobless. So we have to face the COVID, we have to face the climate change, and we need to stop, which is man-made creation. The third C is the conflict. So from here I am urged to the whole world, please come a solution. Otherwise you don't know what's going on tomorrow and day after tomorrow. So that is the reality we are talking. And in my city actually, if you say that, honestly speaking, the reality is only the 7% road for 15 million people. But it should be, as per the book, 25% open space. But we don't have that kind of things.
So, Tamir, I'm really curious about, you set out how many challenges you have, but would you like to share one solution that is very Dhaka-centered? I certainly know, as somebody who follows the news and also sustainability, that a lot of Western countries are looking to Bangladesh for how you're dealing with the climate crisis. Mm-hmm. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but what solution are you bringing to us here at TT from Dhaka?
Actually, we have to make a short term, mid-term, and the long term. What is the short term? If we go for the short term, yes, at this moment, we are trying to introduce the school buses. Now, at this moment, in my city, one school has just given an example, 5,000 cars for 5,000 students, because 33 times more cars than there's a reality, 33 times. So this kind of things, we definitely need to a short-term solution. So we are trying to talk with the school bus, but the guardian, they are very much question mark, whether it is safety, whether it is the reality, the school bus. But why we have this kind of challenging? Because that's I'm saying that we did not introduce such kind of school buses such a long time. That is the reality. So due to the technical solution, there's a lot of technology is now at this moment. So to the short term, we are saying that school buses. And top of that, what is the reality in this at this moment? 5,700 buses with 3,700 owners. So there's a competition. 3,700 owners belongs to 5,700 cars. So they are end of the day, due to we have to go fast, you have to go fast, you have to go fast. There's a big competition and there is a lot of casualty, lot of accidents. So what we did we make a bus route rationalization. And our plan is what I've said, we are making 22 companies with 24 routes with the 6 colors of route. So there's a very new challenge what we have taken. We have the 2 mayors, we have taken like this way. So when we're talking with the 5,700, the owners, 5,700 bus and 3,700 owners. We said, hey, what's going on? But this is the reality. They do the competition. Now you can say, who is the bus owners? The bus owners, after having the master's degree, they don't have any job. So they bought 2 buses. The retirement officer, what they are going to do, they also the buses. So this is the reality in my country, in my city as well. So we are going to make a bus rationalization. And after the bus rationalization, we just make 3 routes. And honestly speaking, the public love it. There's no competition. The 3 bus routes are there. There is a different color. But problem is this, that other bus owners also want to use the same route. So this is not a problem. This is the challenge.
Okay,
so,
okay.
So,
Islam, I'm going to ask you to pause there because I have to bring in some other city leaders from around the world. But I love this little snapshot that you've given us of Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Okay.
Please sit tight. Rafael Lopez Aliago is the mayor of Lima. Mayor, it's so lovely to have you. Welcome. What is your biggest transport challenge in Lima?
Amy, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to have you. Your biggest transport challenge in Lima is what, Mr. Mayor?
First, Amy, I need to express my gratitude for the World Bank and also to mention something. I come from the private sector. I'm mayor of Lima now, but I've been working for banks.
So, Mr. Mayor, it's wonderful to see you. Unfortunately, we don't hear you as well as we see you. So I'm going to ask you to reconnect and talk to the tech team behind the scenes, and then we're going to come back to you. The picture is great. The audio sounds very, very muffled. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to send you away. Hopefully, we'll be able to reconnect so we've got a better connection, because unfortunately, we can't hear you. I'm going to move on and go to Accra. And I'm hoping, but this person does not look like Elizabeth. But hello, who is the mystery person in Accra?
Okay, the mystery person is Alex Johnson.
Yes, Alex, hello.
Yeah, apologies from the mayor of Accra. She has to be in a meeting with the president of the country. And I've been asked to hold forth and then communicate on her behalf.
All right,
so,
Alex, what is your job title?
Okay.
I'm going to promote you to temporary mayor of Accra. What is your job title?
I'm the head of transport for the city of Accra.
Oh, great. We came to the right person. All right. Your biggest challenge in Accra regarding transport. I love Accra. Beautiful city. What is your biggest transport challenge, Alex?
Biggest transport challenge is congestion.
Congestion.
In a very, in a very isolated way of our modal integration. So each of the modes virtually stand on their own. And I think that's the biggest challenge, but we hope to overcome that.
How do you do that sustainably in a green way? I often hear that sometimes the challenge when we're talking about the developing world is how do you develop in a green way when the rest of the world didn't develop in a green way, but they're expecting the developing world to then use green technology and to be sustainable. What are you doing in Accra that would impress us regarding transport?
Okay, I should say that green transport for us has always come along with our climate action plan, which we hold very dear because they address the direct issues to sustainability for our urban governance issues. For the issue of transport, I think we have come to a stage where we are clearly understanding the dynamics of transport on the basis of how the city is growing. So from the old parts of the city to the newer parts of the city, the transportation needs are very quite different. And we think that as a leadership institution, to make sure that these services come handy for our citizens. We are now trying to look at issues of modal integration. We tried several years back to introduce a BRT system, which is supposed to make sure that there is mass movement of people on a sustainable basis. Unfortunately, we still have a large proportion of our services being informal in character. But we've been able to devise a strategy to make sure that the major arterials or the trunk routes have the capacity to connect from the first mile journeys from our communities through these trotro connections. So currently we are on a digital drive as a country and making sure that digital information systems also respond adequately to our transport challenges.
Alex,
thank you.
Alex, the Mayor of Dakar shared with us how they are creating solutions from Dakar that he wanted to share with us here at TT. What would you want to share that is successful or a model that other cities could actually emulate?
Okay, so first of all, I should say that we have a major drive towards building the capacity of the public sector to lead the transformation process. So as we speak, there are data systems that have been laid out to make sure that we understand the character of traveling across the city. One of the major issues is to make sure that we take advantage of the low-hanging fruits and make sure that people walk a lot in Accra, and these are real issues. So the infrastructure for walking should be in place. Now, there is a very constant stakeholder engagement to change the narrative for how we engage the physical space, especially commercial activities in the public space.
So Alex is frozen there mid-word, so we will wonder for the rest of our life what he was going to say next.
Corridors, walking.
Or maybe not.
Yes. Eventually, cycling, and then possibly totally change the way we connect to motorized systems. Yes.
All right, Alex. I'm going to say thank you, and stick around because we hopefully will have questions for our audience who are here in Washington DC and online as well. We go from one chief of transport in Accra in Ghana to another Secretary of Transport in Rio de Janeiro. Maina Celidonio. It's really good to have you. You are representing your Mayor Eduardo Paes. So it's good to have you. I like the fact that we have the chiefs of transport in this conversation because people complain about transport so much. Do they in Rio, or have you solved the transportation challenges for your citizens?
No, thank you so much. No, we haven't. We are in all the newspapers and in the morning. People are complaining the whole time about transportation. But as our other mayor from Dakar said, we are in a post-COVID crisis. When we arrived in January of 2021, we had more or less the BRT system was in a very poor condition. We used to have a 400 bus fleet, and we had only 120 and in a very bad state. So we are trying to requalify the system, and because of the COVID and all the companies got into went bankrupt. So most of the lines, 50% of the lines, bus lines in Rio were not operating. So people complain a lot, but we're starting now to have some progress with a new bus fleet for the BRT system that we just tried renew the fleet for 2 corridors, December and now in March.
The reason we got together city leaders from 4 different cities was to get their take on sustainable mobility today. If you were going to take us on a tour of Rio, what would you show us that you would say, there you go, that is sustainable mobility, it is working for us?
I think for us, it started with a very basic idea of public transportation, because after COVID, with whole crisis, people went back to cars, motorbikes. So now we're trying to see people, you have to go back to public transportation. I think that's our first basic goal. Another initiative we're doing is like connecting the subway and BRT with the cycling plan and cycling routes in the city. So connecting all the stations to the bike lanes. I think this is very important. Some people see bikes as a daily option to have mobility inside the city.
Often we talk, and we're going to talk about a lot about resilience in transportation and also in just city planning. What have you got in place in Rio that helped you to prepare for economic crises, perhaps, or a pandemic or a health scare? What did you have in place, or maybe what do you have in place now that makes you better prepared?
I think one thing we're doing, we're changing the contracts with the bus operators. And now we are not, they had the ticketing, all the fares, and now we are paying per kilometer. This is very important. So when you have an economic crisis or a pandemic, the incentive is for the bus operator to have a very, diminish his operation. And now we are gonna pay for this. So if you have a pandemic or not economic crisis, the city would tell which lines have to be operating, how many trips they have to make. So this is very important so that transport is seen for the public as a public service that is reliable.
Man, I want you to stay with us because I'm sure our audience have got some questions for you, but it's really good to have you. Don't go anywhere, just stay with us. Mayor Islam, what did you write down just then?
Because they're saying about the cycle lane, you know.
Yes.
So there's a very important, after the post-COVID, still they maintain their own way, the cycle lane. But in my city, honestly speaking, there is a huge congestion on the road. So cycle lane is, yes, some are cycle lanes are there, but it is not the connected as a whole. So now, the one good thing is there in our country of the central government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, that we are going to the metro rail. So that is the metro rail is coming up, and this is it is the reality, the metro rail, the underground rail, the elevated express. These are all coming up. But now I must give a thanks to World Bank that we are doing called ICM, Integrated Corridor Management. So because after the metro rail, then what is the next? After they come down, the passenger, where they will go, how they will go. So we want to integrate the system of the metro rail, the elevated express, the bus rapid transit. Lots of things are going on from the central government. Being a city mayor, we want to integrate this one. And if we can integrate it, it will be very easy that people will know, hey, how I'm going to connect from my house to this kind of station. So these are the integrated systems. We are going to do that. Dedicated bus bay, dedicated bus line, dedicated cycle line, dedicated bus parking, and the cycle parking as well. So this is the, we are really very much excited. And I must give a thanks that World Bank come up this kind of solution with the ICM project.
All right, so Mayor, let's see if I've got a solution for poor audio.
Okay.
All right, let's hope that this works out. Mayor Rafael Lopez Aliago is Mayor of Lima. Mr. Mayor, we go back to you. We interrupt you because the sound wasn't good enough. Hopefully it is again, so welcome back to the conversation. Whew.
You hear me?
Yes,
you
yes.
hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now. Yes. Great,
Thanks
go ahead.
a lot. We have technical problem. Now, first of all, I express my gratitude for the World Bank because in the past, I have received two AB loans for hospitality investment in Peru, hotels and trains, creating a lot of employment, more than 100,000 employments in the south zone of Peru. But now we're working at least 2 projects with the World Bank. One is related to a whole new system for the bike lanes in Lima City. It's $100 million first phase investment. And the second credit line is for changing all the traffic lights
from analogical to digital systems in order to have modern transportation in our city. So this is a huge city because we are more than 13 million people now in Lima. In parallel, we are working with the World Bank two projects. One is related to cable cars in order to integrate the metro lines with the buses system for massive transportation. We are working now in this issue. And another issue that we are working on is the cargo train. We have a cargo train that goes from the Sierra to Lima to the coast. Now it's only oriented to cargo, but we are changing the philosophy to implement a massive coaches service for passengers that will allow to transport at least 500,000 people per day. Then we have a lot of strategies that we're working as of today with the World Bank. I invite you, everybody, I invite you to have this kind of meeting also in Lima. I kindly invited to visit Lima because we have a marvelous shore, we have a very exclusive cuisine that is known everywhere. We have a lot of new projects in Lima in order to have a new vision for Lima. Lima has a long tradition of historical place, has been the center of the Spanish Empire in South America. We're trying to recover the Lima downtown in order to attract more investment and more tourism to our city or to our country also. That is a short assume we have for you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Everybody chuckled when they heard, and we're inviting the world to their city. I do appreciate that, and we did in the room. All right, we have 5 minutes, audience. What would you like to ask city leaders from Dakar, from Rio, from Lima, or from Accra? What have we got online, Georges? What is happening?
Not a lot of questions, but I think I'll pick up on one that was raised. I think all of the speakers touched on the importance of these bus operators, you know, and how they interact with these bus operators. A lot of times these are small and medium enterprises or not enterprises at all. If any of the mayors could or secretaries could speak about how they actually interact with these organizations, these associations, or are they enterprises?
Okay. Alex, your thoughts?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes. I should say that from 2010, Accra has had a very cordial relationship with the informal transport sector. We have established a regulatory system that offers them the opportunity to let us know what their operating capacity issues or problems are. So these are now, let me say, system-based communication approaches. There are intended other, let me say, benefits that should come with this kind of system. That is to be able to understand the level of their operations on their various corridors, and then the possible business opportunities that the city can open up in terms of assessing financing for their possibility. So I should say that it's a very systematic way of relating with them, and then also very informal in terms of making them approach us in a very easy way to let us know what their operational problems are. So currently, I think we even have a model to be able to interpret their cost patterns, and so we are able to relate more and more on issues that have to do with policy adjustments. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from within the room. Hello.
Benjamin de la Peña with the Shared Use Mobility Center and the Global Network for Popular Transportation. Mr. Johnson already partly answered it, and it's a question of what we do with the informal transit operators, which serve so much of the city. So Mayor Islam, I think there are about 100,000 rickshaw operators or drivers, or rickshaws actually, more drivers, in Dhaka, and about 6,000 or more trotros in Accra, and countless, maybe close to 25,000 Okadas. And you, Mr. Johnson, you've already mentioned you're dealing with informal transportation, but what else can we do to bring them into this project to make transportation more inclusive? They're inclusive in a way that they serve mostly middle and low income, and the labor force is low income. But how do we make them green?
Well, that's a very good question, especially for my city. Actually, honestly speaking, in my city, officially, from city corporation, we have given the license for rickshaw is 32,000. Officially, 32,000 rickshaws. But unofficially is 1 million rickshaws are running at this moment in my city.
What is happening at the licensing department?
No, because that's why I'm saying from my own that what is the reality? This is the reality. Due to the climate change, the more people are coming and they are doing the rickshaw. This is the reality. So if you see the spiral effect is affected in my city as well. So now we are doing the campaign, hey, let's do the rickshaw. I want to give them the official rickshaw license with a QR code. The new system of the QR code, so at least we can know this rickshaw puller is safe, from where he came is safe. But I'm giving another example that now the drivers, I'm saying that 5,700 buses. So there's a 5,700 drivers also. But are they really trained driver? Are they really safe? No. The driver, I talk with the driver, some driver, hey, from where you get the training? They said, I was the T-boy of the main driver, so now I become a driver also. This is the reality. So we must talk about the reality. Now this is the time to make all the discipline, need to give the training to the driver, need to give a training to the helper. So there is a lot of challenges. I never say this is the problem. I'm saying always this is the challenges. So rickshaw is one of the challenges. Yes, the main roads, we're trying to make it into the tertiary or secondary road, but sometimes they don't listen. They said, we have to run our family. So for that reason, they're coming to the main road as well. But with this reality, yes, we are trying very hard to introduce the other kind of the three-wheelers, other kind of the two-wheelers as well. So there's now a lot of the ride share, the Uber, these are coming now. Sure. So this is a technical solution. We are very much hoping that, of course, the all kind of discipline. That's why I'm giving the QR code with the official rickshaw, and I want to introduce more rickshaw, but it has to be in the system, you know.
Mayor Islam, and all of our city leaders, Alex and Maina and Mayor Raphael, I could spend all day with you because it is fascinating working out not your problems, your challenges, and talking to you. But for now, thank you for taking us on a tour around the globe, talking about sustainable mobility today in your various cities. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very busy people taking time to be on Zoom with us at TT 2023. Thank you very much, Mayor Islam. All right, take a seat in the front row because you're a mayor. Excellent. All right. I know many of you will know Axel van Trottensberg. He is the Managing Director of Operations at the World Bank. He is currently traveling. He is on assignment. But because this is the 20th edition of Transforming Transportation, he is still going to be with us. He joins us via video.
Ministers and distinguished colleagues, thank you for this opportunity to address all of you today. My regrets for being unable to join in person. Today marks the 20th edition of this Transforming Transportation Conference, an annual convening to engage on sustainable transport. Over the past 2 decades, this conference has become a true ideas generator for the future of transport. The knowledge created and insights shared over the course of this week will make a real difference on the ground and can help inform future World Bank transport operations. There has never been a better time for new ideas because collectively we are at a critical inflection point in development. There has been an erosion of development gains, increases in poverty, and we are off track with meeting the SDGs. Knowledge, financing, ideas, partnerships, and solidarity are all needed more than ever. And it is my hope that you use this time this week to think openly and creatively about how we can survey the best global ideas and expertise and bring them to scale to benefit millions of people around the world who need our assistance. Many of you have been with us and our partners at WRI since the inaugural forum in 2003. Your ongoing dedication has driven a great deal of change in a relatively short time. Across the developing world, sustainable transport is now on the minds of many policymakers, due in part to your continued partnership with us at the World Bank. This change is necessary because transport is directly linked with many of today's key development challenges. This is apparent in some of the world's fastest growing cities. In places like Santiago, Chile, Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Dakar, Senegal, efforts to modernize public transport services through reliable and efficient rail and bus systems are improving access to jobs, education, and health services. They are also saving lives by reducing air pollution and helping achieve climate goals. World Bank financing has contributed to many such projects, helping governments advance progress towards sustainable mobility that serves all citizens. Transport importance as a lifeline that connects communities with critical services, resources, and jobs cannot be overstated. But supply chain efficiency is also of utmost importance, and transport has a crucial role to play. The development of efficient and reliable freight and logistics services has been a driving force for economic growth and a globalized economy. Recent overlapping crises catastrophically disrupted supply chains. The consequences are far-reaching for both consumers and businesses. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, transport costs can represent up to 50% of food prices. More than a third of the food that is produced in Africa is lost because of poor logistics. The case for resilient and efficient connectivity is clear and urgent, especially as low-income countries respond to the ongoing food shortages. One of the objectives of today's discussion is exploring new logistics solutions that can ensure a steady supply of critical goods and resources, even in the wake of shocks. There are many promising ideas and recommendations for digitizing port procedures, pairing shipments and big data, and pursuing a transition to alternative fuels. These solutions are important ways to insulate our logistic networks from some future bottlenecks and strengthen the resilience of our supply chains. But are they enough? Although countries have achieved remarkable results in reducing poverty and boosting human capital, there are now serious headwinds. The growing impact of climate change, rising public debt burdens, conflict, and general uncertainty about the future all threaten to reverse decades of development progress. The World Bank has responded to these overlapping crises in full force with record levels of support since 2020, including, first, over $210 billion to fight the impact of the economic and social impact of the pandemic and distribute vaccines. Secondly, over $35 billion to respond to the growing food crisis. Third, over 18 billion in financial support to Ukraine. Our response to these crises demonstrate how we are evolving as an institution and adapting to our client needs. Last fiscal year, we lent a record amount to transport, over $8 billion. Our total portfolio of transport investment is now 36 billion. Increasingly, these funds are being directed to a project with decarbonization, resilience, and climate at the core. Despite our record-setting efforts, the scale of the global challenges is triggering a call for a massive step up in financing to address these challenges for transport and beyond. Our aim is to create conditions that can promote higher levels of private investment in sustainable infrastructure, and your partnership is critical in this effort. Rigorous analysis and global knowledge, including the insights gained this week, can help lay a foundation for future investments and ensure every dollar goes as far as possible. I look forward to the outcomes of the 20th anniversary edition of Transforming Transportation. And I wish you all a very successful set of discussions that drive the agenda towards the change needed. Thank you.